What's happening, everybody? The preseason AP Top 25 poll is out. What did they get wrong? And Hugh Freeze may have said something he may regret. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more throughout this summer. FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. On today's show, we'll run through the AP Top 25 poll. That is out for the preseason. Hugh Freeze says something he may regret about Nick Saban. And Florida loses a defender for the season. It's that time of year, man. Keep losing guys. All right, let's dive into it as the preseason AP Top 25 poll is out. And not a whole lot different from what we saw in the coaches poll just a week ago. Georgia comes in overwhelmingly preseason number one. They get 46 first-place votes. Ohio State comes in number 2. They get 15 first-place votes. And Oregon comes in number 3. They get 1 first-place vote. But after those three, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, there's a run on SEC teams. They've got Texas preseason number 4, Alabama preseason number 5, and Ole Miss preseason number 6. So pretty interesting with those rankings because on one side of the coin, that's the highest it feels like Texas has been rated in a long time. In fact, looking at it, at number 4, Texas's best showing in the AP preseason poll since they were ranked second back in 2009. It also marks the 25th time since 1950 that Texas has been a top 5 team in the AP's preseason poll. So it's been a while. It's 2024. 2009 is the last time Texas was ranked this high in the preseason. Now they've had a few times they've been ranked 11th and, they've been ranked top 12, but certainly not top 4. It's been a while. So that was unique. And then Alabama ranked number 5 in the preseason AP poll for the first time since 2009. And of course, we know what happened with Alabama later that year, but it is Alabama's lowest AP poll preseason ranking since 2009. So kind of funny, the dynamic there. We're celebrating Texas. They're doing something good they haven't done since 2009. Alabama doing something, I don't know if you say bad, but, kind of not where you want to be if you're Alabama, or not where you used to being if you're Alabama. You used to be in preseason top 2, top 3. Ole Miss, really good to see them in there at 6. It's been a while since they have had preseason ranking this high as well. Notre Dame comes in number 7. I saw somebody tweet this earlier, and they read my mind. What is with the Notre Dame hype? Like, I like Marcus Freeman. I think he's going to do a good job eventually. But this whole thing, just assuming Notre Dame's good, again, like, it just gets old and tiresome. Like, I don't know, man. Look, Brian Kelly did a fantastic job there as a head coach, but we're talking about the same Notre Dame team that, came out of the gates last year or 2 years ago, 2022, lost to Marshall. Now, last year they were a little bit stronger, but look at their schedule. I mean, their best wins, they beat Duke, USC, who was abysmal on defense, and then they beat Oregon State in the bowl game. But other than that, I mean, they lost by 8 to Clemson. They lost by 13 to Louisville. They lost by 3 to Ohio State. So, I don't know. All their other big wins all their other wins last year were over Navy and Tennessee State and Pitt and Wake Forest and Stanford. I don't know. Maybe I'm being an SEC homer here. I just don't get the love for Notre Dame. Preseason top 7. Oof. They got Penn State coming in at number 8. Again, this is James Franklin. Every year he starts preseason top 10 or top 15. They roll through their schedule. They beat all the Big Ten teams they're supposed to, and they lose to Michigan, Ohio State. And that's just kind of what Penn State does. And James Franklin gets a contract extension for it. So they're in there. Michigan falls to number 9. They are the reigning national champs, but obviously everybody knows what they lost. Not only you lose Jim Harbaugh, you lose J.J. McCarthy and all those pieces to the draft, and then you also lose Connor Stallions and your cheating schemes. So that's why they're there. Florida State, they go to number 10. Again, coming off the undefeated season, getting their butt spanked by Georgia in the bowl game, obviously with a lot of opt-outs. But that is your AP top 10. So where are the rest of the SEC teams? So Missouri comes in at number 11. LSU comes in at number 13. Tennessee 15. Oklahoma 16. And then the lone SEC team from 17 on down is Texas A&M coming in at number 20. So like we said, very similar to what the coaches poll put out just a week ago. But an opportunity here for some SEC teams to maybe jump in there. When you talk about the others getting votes category, we talked about it at the coaches poll last week, but it's some of the same teams kind of in there. Kentucky got 3, Auburn got 2. So it just kind of tells you if Kentucky starts strong or Auburn starts strong, and some of these teams ahead of them lose, they'll have a chance to kind of jump up there and get themselves into the top 25 rankings. But it's kind of interesting. ESPN, they put out an article basically using their football power index, their FPI, and kind of predicting the season that is to come. And they also put in there, what's the toughest game on the early part of the schedule for some of these teams? And so I thought we'd run through some of these. I'll start with Georgia. They basically say their ceiling in the FPI is 12-0. Their floor is 8-4. The early marquee game is against Clemson in Atlanta, the opener. And here's what Mark Schlabach says. He says the Bulldogs season opener against Clemson at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta will provide the first look at a revamped passing game that loses Brock Powers, Ladd McConkey, and others. Carson Beck will play behind one of the better offensive lines in the country. Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell, Arian Smith, and others will be asked to step up. How quickly can Beck develop that chemistry with some of his new pass catchers? He says new pass catchers. I mean, these guys were on the team last year. They were catching passes last year. So I think that's a little bit of a reach there for Schlabach. But nonetheless, I think it's worth reiterating that Georgia got, 46 first-place votes? I mean, it's pretty overwhelming. And, of course, in the coaches poll and the AP poll, a lot of people say, well, you don't want to be picked there because typically a team that starts preseason number 1 doesn't win at all. I think Kirby Smart and Georgia are up to the challenge. We'll see what they do. All right, other notes. Over at Texas, of course, they've got Texas number 4. Here's what they say. Ceiling for Texas, 12-0. The floor, 8-4. Their key early season game, they mark October 12th against Oklahoma in Dallas. Dave Wilson says, forget the change of conference address. Oklahoma still matters as much as ever. For one, OU has won 4 of the last 5 matchups with Texas, including last season's 34-30 stunner. But following a big non-conference trip to Michigan in week 2, the Horns should be 4-1 at worst when they face the Sooners. But a week later, Georgia comes to Austin with SEC title, with college football hopes on the line. Yeah, here's what's crazy. We talked about Texas losing C.J. Baxter, starting running back for the season. They still have Jaden Blue. There was a note yesterday. Texas backup running back Christian Clark was injured at practice on Monday. According to On Texas, they said we don't know the severity of the injury, but obviously that's something to monitor. I mean, you already lost C.J. Baxter for the year. But, what if Texas struggles to run the football at Michigan and loses a tough one? And then they go into that game against Oklahoma, and you lose that one, and then you got to go play Georgia the next week? I mean, again, I'm just saying that's worst case scenario for the Longhorns. It's not likely to happen, but them putting floor of 8-4 on here, I mean, I would say if things went south for the Longhorns, 7-5 is the floor. So, again, not predicting that. Again, 12-0 is also not likely, or somewhere in the middle there. But man, I mean, I think we're over. I've heard so many people, the Longhorns got an easy schedule. Still an SEC schedule. This ain't Baylor and Kansas, bro. All right, coming in at number 5, they got the Alabama Crimson Tide. Ceiling for them, 12-0. Floor, they do put 7-5 in here for Alabama. key game early in the season is against Georgia on September 28th. Chris Lowe says, not only will this be Kalen DeBoer's first SEC game as Alabama's coach, but it's against Kirby Smart in Georgia, one of the most talented teams in the country. Everybody will be watching, especially an Alabama fan base that is not used to losing at home. Nick Saban went 108-9 at Bryant-Denny Stadium as Alabama's coach. Lost only one SEC game at home in his final 8 seasons. Unbelievable what they were able to do. Yeah, that's going to be a big one. That's a big one. What's Milroe? See, the good thing with Alabama, they get those nice tune-up games against Western Kentucky. You'll let Jalen Milroe get full grasp of this offense, let him find his go-to pass catchers and all that. They do have to go on the road at Wisconsin, but man, they're going to be eyeing that game against Georgia on September 28th. The other team in here in the top 6, of course, the Ole Miss Rebels. They list their key early season game at South Carolina on October 5th, but they list Ole Miss's ceiling 10-2 and their floor 6-6. And Chris Lowe says Ole Miss is one of the most forgiving schedules to open the season in college football. Rebels don't go on the road in the SEC until they face the Gamecocks week 6. Williams-Brice Stadium is underrated in terms of difficult places to play, particularly at night. If Ole Miss rolls in there 5-0, which it should, we'll find out a lot about the Rebels' maturity in a hostile environment. That's what's funny is like all these big games we're talking about with the other teams, Ole Miss's toughest early season game is at South Carolina. I mean, that just tells you the schedule that Lane Kiffin and company lucked out with early this year. Just a couple other ones that are not SEC, and we'll get back to the SEC teams. Notre Dame at number 7, they list their key early season game versus Texas A&M on August 31st, obviously in their opener. They write, if it passes that test, the Irish could easily open the season 8-0 before they host Florida State in early November. And then number 9, Michigan, they list their key early season game against Texas on September 7th. Defending champs will face the first of 2 meetings with college football playoff participants from last year. And, Michigan's going to be sorting out their quarterback spot. Is it Jack Tuttle? Is it Alex Orji? A lot for Michigan to figure out, whereas Texas has a lot figured out already. So that will be interesting to watch. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC. We'll run through some of those other SEC top 25 teams and what the ceiling and the floor is according to the ESPN FPI. It's coming your way here in just a second. First, this episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Look, all throughout this summer, we've been telling you guys FanDuel has been hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. All you got to do is head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Summer's almost over. College football season is upon us, and every day here on the show, we've been updating you with some latest week 1 odds that are posted right now at FanDuel.com. And so we'll jump into those here. LSU versus USC in Las Vegas. That is the opener on that Sunday evening. LSU still sitting at about a 6.5-point favorite, so just under a touchdown favorite. If you like USC to cover that 7, you could certainly take them plus the 6.5 rather. If you like LSU to win by a touchdown or more, take them minus the 6.5. Kentucky, they are 25.5-point home favorites against Southern Miss in their opener. What's the new offense look like with Brock Vandagriff? Certainly one you can get in on there. A&M is still a 1.5-point favorite at home in College Station against Notre Dame. So if you like the Aggies, jump on them minus that 1.5. Or if you think the Irish can get a big road victory in week 1, you could do that as well. FanDuel, they are the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And of course, all the college football action up there for you week in and week out right there at FanDuel.com. Check them out. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin getting you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. Talking all the big topics in college football, like the ever-changing landscape of conference realignment, transfer portal, NIL, expanded playoffs, all that stuff. Locked On College Football available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, let's dive back into it. As we were talking about the SEC teams ranked in the AP poll preseason top 25, and we get to number 11 where they have the Missouri Tigers, and their ceiling they listed 11-1, their floor at 7-5, and their key early season game they list at Texas A&M on October 5th. Eli Lederman says Missouri's first 4 opponents this fall, Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and Vanderbilt, won a combined 14 games last year. So the Tigers' first true test may not come until they travel to College Station the first weekend in October. A relatively favorable schedule means Missouri must take advantage of their opportunities to post high-quality wins. A victory at Kyle Field would bolster the Tigers' postseason hopes and hand Eli Drinkwitz a resume cushion before late-season meetings with Alabama and Oklahoma. Yeah, that's the key for Missouri. Run off all these early season wins that you're supposed to get. And it's going to be a tough one. Not say A&M is going to be or should be a pretty decent team. But you win that one, yeah, it buys you a loss to Bama. It buys you a loss to Oklahoma. And you go 10-2 and you're in the playoff. Very interesting to see what Missouri and Ole Miss. They're both very much in that same boat this year. Very interesting to see what both those teams do this year. Coming in number 13, we mentioned the LSU Tigers. They list their ceiling at 10-2, their floor at 5-7. So, I mean, this thing could go. I think that's a little extreme for LSU. I mean, if Brian Kelly goes 5-7, he ought to be fired. Anything worse than 6-6 is the bare minimum at LSU. But 10-2 would get LSU certainly into the college football playoff, most likely, if they do that. So that's their ceiling. Here's what Schleybaugh writes. He says, the Tigers won't have to tangle with former Heisman-winning quarterback Caleb Williams. This is their key early season game, of course, against USC, Southern Cal, in their opener at Las Vegas, September 1st. He said receivers Brennan Rice and Taj Washington are gone as well, but the Trojans should still be a good test for LSU's rebuilt defense. Tigers were woefully inept at stopping opponents last year, leading Brian Kelly to lure Missouri DC Blake Baker to Baton Rouge. USC quarterback Miller Moss played well in a lopsided Holiday Bowl win over Louisville, throwing for 372 yards and 6 touchdowns. Well, he doesn't mention here that Garrett Nussmeier also played well in LSU's bowl game. So, yeah, it's 2 new quarterbacks replacing 2 former Heisman winners, but 2 guys who started their bowl games and got bowl experience. See what Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier look like in this one. But, yeah, I would lean more towards LSU being a 10-2 type team than a 5-7 type team. By the way, our buddy Matt Moscona, host of Locked On LSU, very complimentary of what he's seen so far from LSU's defense in practice at fall camp. So it's kind of something to watch there. Look, they can't be as bad as they were last year. They have to be better, right? Number 15, Tennessee. ESPN's FPI lists their ceiling at 11-1, their floor 6-6. Man, these are such extremes. They list their key early season game against NC State at Charlotte, North Carolina, September 7th. They say after a home opener with Chattanooga, Tennessee will get an early test in week 2 against NC State at Bank of America Stadium. Nico Iamaleava's first regular season start away from Knoxville will come against the Wolfpack secondary that led the ACC in interceptions last year. Talented offense led by Coastal Carolina transfer Grayson McCall at quarterback should present a good early challenge to a promising Vols defense. In Charlotte, Josh Heupel and company can claim a nice resume-building win and an early tone setter for the Vols. Yeah, NC State opens, I think they're 24th in that preseason poll, in the AP poll. So, yeah, they're right there, 24th. So it'd be a top 25 win, 2 weeks into the season for Josh Heupel and company. So that would be really good for them. But, again, I just can't get over. I would lean more towards Tennessee being closer to 11-1 than I would 6-6. I mean, let's be real. If they go 7-5, it's a rough year 3 for Josh Heupel. All right, coming in number 16 on this list, it is the Oklahoma Sooners, and they list their ceiling as 11-1, their floor at 6-6. Their key early season game, Tulane, September 14th. Lederman says Oklahoma's stiffest pre-SEC tune-up may well come when Tulane visits Norman for the 3rd time since 2017. Oregon quarterback transfer Ty Thompson and running back Mekhi Hughes, the reigning AAC Rookie of the Year, should test the Sooners' experienced defense and a Green Wave defense that held opponents at 20.5 points per game last year to challenge Jackson Arnold. It's a week before Tennessee visits to open up SEC play. Oklahoma cannot overlook Tulane. It was only 3 years ago that the Green Wave nearly upset the Sooners in Norman. So it kind of tells you what you need to know about Oklahoma's schedule, where they're telling you their toughest early season battle is against Tulane. I do want to mention here, they do list Miami on here at 19. I think it's worth mentioning. They do list their early season test week 1 at Florida, August 31st. They write, the season opener against Florida will provide plenty of immediate answers about Miami as Cam Ward is advertised at quarterback. A loss there, and there will be plenty of questions about how the Canes respond moving forward. I think that's almost a must-win for Billy Napier, right? Like, you're at home against Miami, even with all those weapons. You know how brutal that schedule is in the backstretch of the season. You need a win there. And rounding out the top 25, they got the Texas A&M Aggies at number 20. They list their ceiling at 10-2, and their floor at 5-7. And, of course, their key early season game against Notre Dame, August 31st. Max Olson says, you couldn't draw up a more fascinating matchup for Mike Elko's debut. A Fighting Irish team with serious college football playoff expectations, led by Elko's former Duke quarterback, Riley Leonard. Coming to College Station for a primetime showdown at Kyle Field. It's as good as it gets for a signature victory opportunity to kick off a new era for the Aggies. Again, just kind of funny that everybody's all over the place here on where to go with the Aggies and LSU and others. So we will see. All right. That is the AP preseason top 25 poll. When we return, Hugh Freeze saying something maybe he might regret. We'll bring that up here in just a second, right here on Locked On SEC. First, this episode presented to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors, they've got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with that eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're bringing rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. That's ebaymotors.com. All right, so we dive back into it. Interesting notes. And by the way, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Hugh Freeze over at Auburn sat down with Marty Smith and Ryan McGee of the SEC Network as they do that featured show called Talkin' Season ahead of the season. By the way, full disclosure, they recorded this the week of SEC Media Days. They sit down with all the coaches, and then they debut these episodes as the season gets closer. Well, Marty Smith, Ryan McGee sat down with Hugh Freeze, and they put out a clip on Monday previewing the series, talking about Hugh Freeze's losses to Nick Saban. And I'll just let you guys hear what Hugh Freeze had to say about when asked about his wins and near wins against Nick Saban at Alabama. Here was Hugh Freeze.
Now that Saban is retired, I can ask you this and you can actually answer it. You were one of the people that always gave him hell every time you played against him, whether that was at Ole Miss or Auburn. Why? What do you think you maybe understood that someone else might not have?
Well, at Ole Miss, it was certainly, I think we were one of the first staffs to bring in the tempo RPO world, and he didn't like that at all and tried to get it changed and all of that. And then he started doing it,
right.
You know, but, and he's a good friend of mine for sure. But I did understand what complicated their calls. I mean, we honestly, Nick is incredible, but I should have 4 wins against them. We beat them twice, and we had them 24-3 the third year, and I wasn't smart enough to slow it down. And then last year, easily could have gone our way. So I may have not phrased that exactly right on everybody, but we easily could have beat him a few more times.
Yeah, I like Hugh kind of jumps in there. I don't want everybody to look. You say that, it's going to grab headlines that you should have had more wins against Nick Saban. Here's the thing with that. And let's dissect each of the matchups. In 2012, Hugh Freeze and Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss, lost to Bama 33-14. Bama led 27-7 at halftime. Ole Miss was shut out in the first and fourth quarters. Bo Wallace had 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Wasn't close. 2013, year 2 at Ole Miss. The Rebels lose to Bama 25-0. It was 9-0 Bama at halftime. Ole Miss never scored a point. Bo Wallace threw for 159 yards. Ole Miss rushed for 46 yards as a team. So 0-2. In 2014, of course, the epic 23-17 win in Oxford over number 3 Alabama. Bo Wallace throws for 3 touchdowns, no picks. Blake Sims, not as good. And Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss get a epic big win. The next year, 2015, the other epic win, 43-37. Ole Miss led 17-10 at halftime. They took a 43-24 lead with 10 minutes to go. Bama scored a couple late touchdowns, had the ball with 25 seconds left, down 7, but couldn't do anything, and Ole Miss wins again. Then in 2016, Ole Miss leading 24-17 at halftime. They think they're going to run this off for a third time in a row, but not so fast. Bama comes rolling out in the second half, scores 4 touchdowns and a field goal. Ole Miss did cut it to a 5-point game with 2:51 to go, but Bama gets the ball back. Damian Harris picks up a couple first downs. Ole Miss never gets the ball back, and they lose 48-43. Swag Kelly, by the way, good day that day, throwing over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, but it wasn't enough. So that was the one near win, the first near win. I don't know if I'd call that a near win. I mean, you had a 7-point lead at halftime, and Bama just blew the doors off you, basically. I mean, they came out gangbusters. You made it closer in the final minutes, but it doesn't feel like one that you let slip away. Like, Bama was the hungrier team in the second half. And then, of course, last year, I'll give you that one. That was the other near win, 2023. Hugh Freeze coaching at Auburn now. Auburn loses 27-24. Auburn leads 24-20 with under 2 minutes to go. And, of course, on the epic 4th and goal at the Auburn 31, 32 seconds remaining. Jalen Milroe, 31 yards to Isaiah Bond for the go-ahead touchdown, the heartbreaker. And, look, it's one that is stuck with all the Auburn guys we've talked to this offseason have said that game absolutely sticks with them. But for Hugh Freeze to say, I should have 4 wins against Nick Saban, I mean, I'll give you 3, Hugh, but I'm not giving you the 4th one. That 2016 game was, again, you should have played better. You played better in the second half, yeah. And he said it in that quote. He said, we took the foot off the gas, or, we should have slowed it down, basically. Like, they were still trying to go for the big touchdowns, go for the big plays, and not eating up clock, and, ended up costing them. But last year was one you should have won. Yes, I will give you that one. But anyway, a lot of Bama fans having fun with that quote today. Hugh Freeze says should have had 4 wins against Nick Saban. All right, one more note before we get out of here. It's that time of year. We've been talking about it. Players getting hurt and being done for the season. And Billy Napier sharing on Monday that Florida suffered a notable blow to their defensive line depth as defensive lineman Jamari Lyons going to miss the 2024 season. He was injured in the Gators' first scrimmage of fall camp over the weekend. Napier saying Jamari Lyons broke his ankle. He will be out for the season. Obviously, our thoughts and prayers are with him. We got all 132 players on the spot there to support him as he was carried off the field. And just one of those things you hate to see in fall camp, right? The guy goes down and lost for the season. The Lion, 6'3", 304 pounds, entering his 3rd season with the program, redshirt his freshman year, played 10 games last year as a sophomore, and had some tackles, had some hits. It's going to be part of that rotation. And so now you look at Cam Jackson and say, put him in bubble wrap. Can't afford him to get hurt. Joey Slackman should play on the interior there. Caleb Banks, of course, big Desmond Watson still hanging around. Kelby Collins there as well. So they got some dudes, but you lose some depth. And coming out week 1 against the Miami Hurricanes, they're going to try to run the football on you. Going to need to be strong on the interior of that defensive line. So sorry to see it, Jamari Lyons, and just add him to the growing list here now. We've got Jordan Thomas, the DB at Tennessee. We've got C.J. Baxter, the running back at Texas. We've got Reuben Owens, the running back at Texas A&M. And now we've got Florida defensive lineman Jamari Lyons lost for the season. Hate to see that stuff happen this time of year, but it always does. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. You can go check out our friends at Locked On College Football. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, they're going to get you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description of this podcast, so you don't even need to search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Come on back and see us, won't you?